While my guest fought for her life, struggling with her attacker, falling to the street, being slashed over and over again, she drew strength from Claude McKay's poem, If We Must Die. She made the words hers, and she kept repeating them as the blood gushed. If I must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot. All the while, trying to block the knife wielder, fighting in and out of the poem, I'll face the murderous, cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back. She didn't die, and she's here to tell the tale. Superintendent of Police, Attorney at Law, Minister of the Gospel, and so much more. Well, Gladys Brown Ellis called on Claude McKay. He's from James Hill, she's from James Hill, and it just resonated with her. I'm so happy that you're here, Gladys.
I'm happy to be here too, Faye.
Wonderful. Superintendent of Police, but it didn't all start there.
Not
it
at
started
all.
at James Hill.
Right there, right there.
Get us off with the earliest stories that you can remember.
Going to Edwin Allen High and being as another child with my sister, my mother having two of us going to the same high school and finding it difficult to send both of us. And it was a very, very hard time for her. My mother had 9 children at that time, 11 in fact, but 2 died at a very early age. So she had 9 of us. My father died when I was 3. So she had to struggle with 9 children. And of the 9, only myself and Beverly Brown went to high school. So it wasn't easy. But what my mother did not anticipate is that we would have wanted to do GCE. You know, my mother was one of those persons who wasn't a good reader and writer. She could read her Bible, but nothing else. So she thought that sending us to school was enough. We wanted to do exams. We ultimately realized that going to high school would not get us anywhere without the subjects. And so for me, it was a choice. My mother decided to push my younger sister.
That's Beverly.
That's Beverly. She did journalism. She explained that you were her teacher. She was in your first batch in 1985 at Caramac. And so what happened is that I would have to go to school 2 weeks, and then the other 2 weeks I would go to work in tobacco. You know, in Claren and James Hill, Bog Hole, you have the tobacco. You would pick them.
So you worked in the tobacco fields at Bog Hole at James Hill?
I did, and tie them the next week. You would tie the green tobaccos so that they would quail, and that way now I'd earn a little something to pay my bus fare and my school fee. And when there was no money, I would walk 7 miles from James Hill to Edwin Allen and back. And along the way, we'd steal oranges and cane, of course, to offset the tiredness and the hunger. But it was like that. It wasn't a bed of roses at all. It was a huge struggle, but I was ambitious. But along the way, I fell among thieves, put it that way. I got pregnant at 16 3/4.
16 3/4. I've never heard it quite put like that, but it's Gladys. So
I got pregnant in August, and I was supposed to go into grade 10 this September. Went back to school, but by November, the nurse called me and said, "Are you pregnant?" I said, "I don't know." So she examined me, and they said, "You can't come back to school." I was a champion netballer. I was an athlete. I was throwing the shot put, javelin, discus for Edwin Allen at that time. And while I was pregnant, I was still doing netball. I was the best shooter in my time.
So when you were told that you couldn't come back to school and you realized there's a baby on the way, what did you do?
I did nothing. But I went home now, and my mother said to me one day, "Your father dreamed me and tell me, say, you're a breed. Your father dreamed and tell me, say, Baby G, a breed." Because in James Hill, that's my yard name, Baby G. And I didn't answer. She said, "You're not Tanina, you know? You're not Tanina."
So you were put out?
Yes, missus. She put me out.
So what happened?
My other sister now who was living there was going back to St. Thomas. So she said, "Come with me. come with me because you have nowhere to go. And my mother was determined that I was not going to stay there and bring shame on her because she was in the church for all these years. And at that time, when you have a daughter who is pregnant, you can't do anything in the church. You put her on back bench.
I have a friend who tells me
she didn't want
his
to be put on back
grandfather was
bench.
put on back bench.
So she preferred to pass away with me.
I have a friend whose grandfather was put on the back bench,
She
and
part-
his comment was, well, the back bench, no, the front bench no softer than the back bench. But no, really. How did you pick the pieces up? You went to St. Thomas with your older sister.
Yes, my older sister, that is Jacent Brown. She's now in England. And she decided to give me a catch, so to speak. And everybody else in my family were just so disappointed. But at that time, I didn't even see it as disappointment in me. I saw it as everybody turning against me. But I decided that I would have the child. And by then I was 17. He was in St. Thomas too. But at that time, my sister didn't want me, or I didn't want to go live with any man. So she took me in. Eventually, I ended up living with the guy because my sister didn't have enough space in her place. And so when my child was 9 months old, I realized that this is not for me. I need an education. I was an avid reader. And so I recognized that going back to school would be the only solution. Education would be the key to get me out of this state of poverty, out of this state of degradation, and put me somewhere where I could make something of myself.
How did you go back? What classes did you attend?
Well, Beverly now was the one who preached to my mother and said, please give Baby J a chance. Let her come back. She can make it. All she needs is somebody to give her a chance. And at that time, they had the Heart program, and they were giving out $100 per month. So I got involved with the Heart program, went back to evening classes at Edwin Allen, and I was allowed to do some subjects. At that time, I couldn't afford more than 2 because the $100 was to buy my toiletries and to keep me going and buy a tin of Milo for my son. At that time, it was $10. And so I was able to do 2 subjects, and I used the 2 subjects to get into the Jamaica Constabulary Force, that noble institution.
And you've served for what, almost 30 years?
Almost 30 years, September 12th, Gilbert Day. I would have spent 30 years in this organization.
You were accepted into the Jamaica Constabulary Force, but you had in fact put in an application for the MICO as well.
MICO Teachers College FAE. But guess what happened? I had made the application, and I got both letters on the Friday asking me to come in on the 12th of September. I decided to choose the police force because they pay you and train you. While at MICO at that time, I would have had to pay my way. And at that time, I was engaged to be married too. I had met a lovely man, and he wanted me to go to MICO because he said he didn't want to marry a police. He wanted to marry a teacher. I said, no, I don't want any man to school me. I want to be independent. I want to to get my own feet wet and be independent. And so I made a choice that was the least expensive of the 2.
Because going into the police, you get clothing, you get food, you get all of that. If
all
you
of
gone
that
to
out
MICO,
of the
you'd
salary.
have had to provide
Exactly.
all of that yourself.
So you get a stipend. More than a stipend, you get your pay as a young constable.
Yes.
And from that, your food and lodging would be removed, and you get the change.
Gladys Brown Ellis is my guest. And when we come back, I know you want to hear about the business with the fighting off and dropping on the street and all that. Yeah, you're going to hear, right? I'm just setting it up for you. And you have to hear how she defended herself and what really happened. But I want to take you to the Jamaica Constabulary Force and being there that very first day when Gilbert hit. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying with us. My guest is Superintendent of Police, Gladys Brown Ellis, an attorney at law, Minister of Religion, motivational speaker. But right now, we're going to go back to hear about her first day or night in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and then the months of training and the shock she experienced when she emerged from that institution. So you went in the day Gilbert struck, 1998.
1988.
Beg your pardon,
Exactly,
1988,
yes.
the 12th of September.
Right.
What happened?
So I went in the morning, and at that time we had very, very heavy winds. And I remember getting a ride on one of the Korean trucks. And at that time, you used to have Koreans down by Free Zone. As a matter of fact, Faye, while I was waiting to be called to join the Jamaica Constabulary Force, I was working as a security guard down there because I figured I needed a job. And any job is noble as long as it provides for me. And so I got a ride on one of those Korean trucks, and the wind was so rough. So they took me from Hagley Park Road, where I was living, at 14 York Avenue, and they took me to the training school. And then from there, Faye, we were incarcerated.
Incarcerated?
I use that word deliberately because we did not see the light of day. We didn't see Jamaica until December. We went in this 12th of September, and it was not until December we were allowed to emerge and to see the destruction that has happened are taking place in Jamaica.
And I would never have thought about that because we were all out and we were up and down seeing what is happening, chopping down logs to move around. But you were in that place not knowing what had happened in Jamaica.
No TV, no light, no water. Lucky thing I know how to bathe in a big jill of water, Faye. My God. Yeah? Lucky thing I knew from country how to wipe up with little or no water and to survive. So it was a matter of surviving with the little that they had. They had a well there, or a tank, and we were able to use that water sparingly.
And we were talking about Twickenham Park.
Twickenham Park at that time.
Yeah. But you also had some other challenges because you went in with little or nothing.
Little or nothing.
Very limited clothing and all of that.
If I must say so, I had to use one brassiere to make two, to take off the front of one and put it on the back of another. So where I am in life, I have struggled, I've worked hard to ensure that I'm born poor, but I'm not for dead poor. And I can say that to anybody who have self-actualization in mind. It's not where you're coming from, it's where you're going. So don't watch the rags. Rise from the ashes.
Indeed.
Make the best of your situation. That's what I did.
You've spent 30 years in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, almost, right?
September coming,
What
yes.
have you accomplished? What are the positions you've held?
I would have been a fingerprint technician. That was my calling. My real training when I joined in 1989. I was sent to the fingerprint. After training, I went to Beatonfoot for 2 months because I wanted to interact with people. I didn't want to be just sitting in an office space. I wanted to be there on the road in my Chris uniform, looking trim and neat and pretty at that time. Still a little something is left. And I went to Beatonfoot, but the hat and my migraine were not friends at all. And I suffered, and I asked for a transfer, and I was sent to fingerprints. So we did the entry exam and the training, and whilst there, I went back to school again.
What did you go to study this time?
I wanted to do some more O-levels, and CXCs, at that time, CXCs were right around the corner, and GC was being phased out.
Yeah.
So I went back, did some more, and I ended up with 7 subjects. With the 2 I had, I did 5 more, and I got them. A lot of...
Can you, in about a minute, enumerate the things that you have accomplished, both professional accomplishments and academic?
Oh, let me see how best I can do that. I would have done A-levels. I would have gotten a Bachelor's of Arts degree, my major being in English, because I would have applied to UWI to do law. Didn't get through initially, so I decided not to waste time, but to do a first degree, and that matriculated me into law.
So your first degree is in English?
Is in English.
Professor Eddie Ball would have been
one of my teachers, and he said, Gladys, you're such a cunning girl. I had you all these years, 3 years teaching you and didn't know you were a police. Most persons thought I was a teacher or something, but...
Sorry, so you did the first degree, and what did you do after that in terms of your academic?
In terms of my academic, I would have gone straight into law. 3 graduated from the first degree and went straight into the Faculty of Law in first year in UWI and the additional 2 years in Barbados.
What was the experience in Barbados like?
It was a wake-up call because, Barbados is a little smaller than Jamaica, but a quiet place. Not that much crime, and if you even have crime, you don't know about it. It is kept under the carpet, so to speak. So it was a bit like survival, you know.
So you came back to Jamaica and you went to the Norman Manley Law School.
Went to Norman Manley Law School, and I think just before I left, my Caribbean program that I did, my research paper, I was told that it was so good I should publish it. So I published that in the form of a book. It's Patriarchy in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, its impact on gender equality. And that was the first book that chronicled women's movement and progress in the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
How did that book do?
It could have done better, because I still have copies selling.
Yes.
Right, it's on
But that's
Amazon
a very
and all
important
of
work
that,
for you
yeah.
to have done, though.
I believe
looking
it was.
at the movement of women in the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Right. And then I completed my law degree, and I was sent on secondment to the DPP's office, the Director of Public Prosecution, where I stayed for 2.5 years, and then from there to the AG's office, where I spent
Attorney
5
General's
months.
office.
Yes.
What do you do now? Because you're something of a judge, kind of. That's how I see it.
I sit as a president or a judge in the Court of Inquiry section that is responsible for the disciplining of people in our police personnel. So whatever the DPP cannot or don't see fit to charge persons for criminally, it is sent back to the force, and we are asked to take disciplinary action against the member. So a file is prepared, and all of that is done, and convening orders are prepared, and those files for Area 4 and 5 are sent to my office, where I don't see the file until after the trial. So it's an inquiry where you inquire into what is happening.
Yes.
It's akin to a trial.
Yes. You're also the name associated with CISOCA.
Oh.
Would you like to just remind us what CISOCA means and what the role of that agency was?
The Center for the Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse. I went to CISOCA in 2011. I was at the Bureau of Special Investigations as a legal officer, and from there I was transferred by Mr. Ellington, who saw something in me, to CISOCA to take charge there.
Could I ask you to just let us take a break, and then when we come back,
Definitely.
we finish about the CISOCA, we talk about your role in the Tivoli operation and after, and then, okay, I'm going to tell you how to fight off the man downtown, okay? Just give us a break. It's Profile. We'll be right back. My guest is Gladys Brown Ellis. I'm so happy that you could stay with us, as a matter of fact. Superintendent of Police Gladys Brown Ellis, attorney at law, and so much more. We took a break when we were talking about your work at CISOCA, that former Commissioner of Police, Owen Ellington, saw something that you could bring to that agency and sent you there. In a nutshell, how would you describe the years you spent there and what you accomplished?
I accomplished a lot in my own mind. It was a contribution that I did not regret, because I was one of the persons who would have caused that center to become known to a lot of persons. Many persons did not realize that the center existed or that they could get the attention they deserved. People would have been raped, both male and female. People would have been abused. So this center provided for women and children. And, men will come, but not very often. And so it was an opportunity for me to put it on record that we are there to help battered women, to help victims of rape, incest, you name it. And we got quite a push from the media, because they were able to cover some of the things we were doing and cause women to know that no matter how long you have been raped, there's no statute of limitation.
But you are also very open to the media. You're very available. So we could always call you and talk with you, and you would give us information and guide us. But before you went to CISOCA, you had another big job, and that was the Tivoli operation.
Oh, yes.
How did you manage that? What were your responsibilities there?
I was in charge of the dead. I was in charge of the dead. Every single one of the persons who died in Tivoli from day one, from the bodies reached KPH, Kingston Public Hospital. I had to be taking numbers, giving them numbers. So what we decided to do along with Inspector Harris was to give them numbers, numerical numbers, so that we didn't know who these people were. So we had them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the bodies came in, some of them were already decomposed, Faye, and it was just, you just have to be a man. You have to just man up and face this thing, because somebody had to do the dirty work. Unfortunately or fortunately, I was chosen for whatever reason.
How did it affect you?
It didn't affect me initially until later when I found out I couldn't eat barbecue chicken or stuff with gravy on it because of the whole encounter with those dead people. I lived with them for 3 months. 3 months, seeing their faces, working with them. They became my family for 3 months. And out of those 3 months, Faye, I got only 1 day. And that 1 day was a Sunday for me to go back to church, for my people to see that I was still around. 3 months, every single day, we were with those bodies, getting them x-rayed, getting them tagged and numbered in the cemetery. When we were in the cemetery, we came under gunfire. And we had to duck. I used my chin to dig a hole in the cemetery, because I was just shaking like a leaf, because limbs were being cut with the gunfire, cutting the limbs, and they were just falling on me. And I was there with my chin digging a hole in the ground. It was that scary. And then you have the dead bodies in the ground somewhere at a far stage of decomposition. So we had to do some of the postmortems in the cemetery.
You also had to speak up at the inquiry.
Oh, yes, I did.
How did that affect you?
It was an opportunity for me to vent. Even though I was given expert evidence or good evidence, it was an opportunity for me to speak about what had happened. Because sometimes when you keep things shut in, they affect you, Faye. So I used that opportunity to vent and to just bring back things into perspective and to explain the number of persons who died as opposed to what persons thought.
And how do you think the information you shared helped the Jamaican public?
I think it did. It helped the Jamaica Constabulary Force also, because persons thought we just slaughtered so many more people, like 120, when in fact it was just 69 persons. Others who were in my group of dead bodies, some would have died otherwise. And I was able to explain to the commissioner and his team that not all the persons, not all the 75 that I counted died as a result of gunshot wounds or being fired on. Some died from natural causes, and those bodies ended up with the Tivoli group. So one man died from a little piece of steel into his kidney. His body was in perfect condition, just that piece of steel in his kidney.
You're a woman of steel. We're going to close off part 1. Okay, all right. I'm going to do part 2 because you have to hear what happened downtown, okay? And I promise you, when we start part 2, I will start with the incident downtown that nearly took her life. My guest is Superintendent of Police Gladys Brown Ellis, attorney at law, somebody who's a great storyteller, as you can see, and a motivator. We're coming back with part 2. Make sure you join me next week. This is Profile.